Hey guys, Nathan Brendan Masters. This is a back cover I'm inking for CurseRisen Unification, partly based on the Intrazone 1 cover from back in the day. And I'm using a brush that needs no introduction, the Winsor Newton Series 7 3-round mini. Now, I'm trying to get the camera to focus on the name, but you guys know what it is. If you can't afford the Winsor Newton brushes, a good alternative is the Silver Black Velvet line of brushes. The bristles are a mix of squirrel hair and synthetic fibers. There's a set of 3 with a 0, 2, and 4 round, and it's actually cheaper than one Winsor Newton Series 7 3 round. So do with that information what you will. My solution, of course, was to buy the Series 7 3 mini round. This was based on the price to performance ratio, which I base a lot of my art purchases on. Some of the best inkers in comics use these brushes. The big thing is the amount of ink that they hold and how thin of a line you can get and how thick of a line you can get from one brush. Now, the popular brushes are the 2 and the 3. Some people use a 4. I'll put some links in the description to some videos by known comic book inkers, and they talk all about the Series 7 and the history of it in regards to comic books. And you can see right here, I've gone from drawing a thin line to actually laying down some blacks with this one brush. So I went from thin to thick. You can actually get thinner lines than what I'm making here with this brush. Now, if I were to lay down a whole lot of black, I would, switch to my brush pen or to a bigger brush. But for something like this brush right here, just one brush, is very capable. But I do want to be careful to not give the idea that you have to have specific materials to do this. Like I say, there are cheaper materials, the silver black velvet, I mentioned that, and Winsor Newton synthetic brushes are actually good. A lot of artists are also inking with brush pens, just like myself and many other people, but I jump between a lot of things. I do brushes, brush pens. I have nibs and fine liners. Obviously, whatever works for what you're doing. When I'm drawing smaller, like this, I'm drawing at 11 by 17. So I tend to use my brushes and my brush pen. If I'm drawing smaller, I would use my G pen and probably my smaller brushes, something like this, or of course the silver black velvet, which is my favorite brush right now. But I will say a lot of the price on this brush also comes from its fame. This brush is well known, it's tried and tested. You can search this brush on YouTube and find a ton of people talking about it, particularly from the point of view of inking. In fact, the way I found out about these brushes was from looking at inking videos, and they were mentioned a hell of a lot. And sometimes the artist would be using something different and still say something about the Series 7. Keep an eye on how much ink this brush holds. This is the mini. And I'm doing this in real time so you can see how much time elapses between me using it and me dipping it. And look at how much ink is coming off this brush. Also keep in mind, this is my first time using this brush. Aside from some quick mark making just to kind of get used to it and get the bristles loose and everything, you want to run this under some warm water to, get things going, just like you would with many other brushes. From the look of it, you wouldn't think it could do what it does, but you're seeing it do what it does. I would love to see one of the old school pros really get down with this brush, but they all have the standard version of the brush. Currently, my go-to is still the Pentel Fude brush pen, and that's like when I, like, just say I'm doing my sketch stuff in my sketchbook or whatever I'm doing, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to grab that first and then, start thinking about other options. I even think this looks better in some cases, but there are some things such as hair and things like that that I really actually prefer my brush pen. but I do find that this allows for a nice transition between the two. The elephant in the room, of course, the bristles are small, but the barrel is fat. The bristles are soft enough to give you the line that you need. The tip is very fine. I wish I had something a little bit different that I could show you that had a little bit more detail in it, but this is what I had on my desk, so this is what I went with. Actually, guys, I decided I do want to show you these lines. Now, these aren't going to be the greatest lines in the world, but they'll get the point across. We're going to do some thin to thick lines right here. So, it's the first one. And you can see how thin you can get this from this brush. Now, I'm going to tell you something. The ink does matter. This was my go-to ink right now, which is the Carbon Black. So that, for those who don't know, Carbon Black is a fountain pen safe India ink. And you see I can get these thin lines with that. Now, I did actually use the Sumi ink, which is a little bit thicker, and I didn't get the lines as thin as this. Like, you can see just how thin that line is. So the type of ink you use does indeed matter. The thicker the ink, the harder it'll be to get lines like this. So if you want to go this thin, you want to use something like a Carbon Black, maybe an Ultra Draw, something like that, to get this kind of line. And these are ridiculously thin lines coming off of the 3-round mini. So you can get those small details with this brush. Now, granted, anything that this brush does, the standard brush probably does a little better. Obviously, longer bristles, bigger belly. But I haven't seen this brush talked about a lot in regard to inking comics. So I'm talking about it, and I like it. Now, if you have the money, I suggest you get the standard Series 7 numbered 1, 2, or 3 round. Some go even higher than that. Those are the ones that many of the pros use, and just from using this mini, I can tell why they do. But if you want something that doesn't hurt the wallet as much, you may want to consider this one, especially if you're doing something where you're looking for a little bit more control, which this brush, I would say, does offer you that. I can see myself using this alongside my nibs for some of my off-size comics in my upcoming manga. I draw that stuff on smaller size paper, but I will be using Sumi ink with that project, so we'll see how that goes. And because I'm using Sumi ink, I use a lot of brushes with the Sumi. Sumi doesn't really work well with brush pens. Sumi ink always gets that dark black, and in case you're wondering, yes, this is Sumi ink I'm using for this cover. I am using a thicker line for those projects, but I will still need that ability for line variation, and this does offer that. So a good pick all around. The Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes are Kolinsky Sable brushes, so that's weasel hair. The Silver Black Velvet, as I mentioned before, that's squirrel hair mixed with synthetic fibers. If you get this brush or any of those expensive animal hair brushes, invest in some brush soap. It's a good idea to clean them after use. It will help you keep your brushes longer, and don't just leave them in the water. If you're interested in this brush, I will leave an affiliate link in the pinned comments and in the description. If you buy through there, I get a little something back at no extra cost to you, and it supports the channel. Other than that, you guys take it easy. Nathan Brendan Masters. Awesome.
Don't look back, we're here to stay. A life we knew would come one day. And this is it, the borderline to where the future leaves us behind. The fire will burn.